You think you know this story, that the Berlin Wall came down in a wave of cheers and celebration, the triumph of freedom over tyranny. But history isn't always what it seems. What if I told you the most iconic moment of the Cold War, the fall of the wall, wasn't ordered by leaders or orchestrated by governments, but triggered by a misunderstanding and saved from bloodshed by a man whose name you've probably never heard? Tonight, we bring you a story of secrets, silence, and a border guard who stood at the edge of history with his finger on a trigger. This is Hidden in History, where shadows still speak. Subscribe to uncover the past they tried to erase. East Berlin, November 9th, 1989. The city is restless, uneasy. The air feels brittle, like something is about to break. That evening, Günther Schabowski, a senior East German official, sits before a room of Western journalists. He's tired, disorganized. He shuffles his papers. Then a reporter asks a question. When will East Germans be allowed to travel freely across the border? As far as I know, immediately, without delay. What he didn't realize was this. He'd just unleashed a political avalanche. The new travel policy wasn't effective immediately. It hadn't even been finalized. But the press conference was broadcast live. And millions of East Germans, watching quietly in their apartments, suddenly believed the gates were open. By 8 p.m., hundreds of people had gathered at the Bornholmer Strasse border crossing. By 9 o'clock, it was thousands. They weren't screaming. They weren't violent. They just stood there, pressing forward, demanding their right to leave. Inside the guard post, Lieutenant Colonel Harald Jäger was watching everything, a loyal officer of the East German regime, a man who believed in the system until that night. As the crowd swelled, Jäger called his superiors, over and over again. No clear answers, just delay, fear, silence. And then, something worse, an internal memo, stamped and signed. It authorized lethal force against those who attempted to cross. The wall, it turns out, had one more dark trick to play. Jäger looked out over the crowd. He saw families, children on their parents' shoulders, old women holding candles. He saw his own people, the ones he was ordered to shoot if necessary. His officers waited, weapons ready. And then, just after 11:15 p.m., he made his decision. He opened the gates. No command from Berlin, no paperwork, no orders, just a choice. Thousands surged through. Tears, laughter, embraces. They walked into West Berlin as if waking from a nightmare. And not a single shot was fired. While the world celebrated, East Germany's secret police, the Stasi, began destroying evidence. Millions of files, names, addresses, surveillance reports, the details of betrayal, friends spying on friends, children reporting on their parents, entire lives catalogued in manila folders and hidden drawers. In Berlin alone, over 15,000 sacks of shredded files were discovered after the regime fell. Some are still being pieced together by hand and algorithm, even today. And yet, it could have gone another way. There were 380,000 Soviet troops in East Germany at the time. They were watching, waiting, armed. In Hungary, in 1956, Soviet tanks crushed a revolution. In Prague, in 1968, they did it again. But in Berlin, in 1989, they stood down. Not because they weren't ready, but because Gorbachev had quietly decided, no more blood for borders. The Berlin Wall didn't fall. It wasn't torn down by a government. It opened because one man chose compassion over control. Because a bureaucrat misspoke. Because truth slipped through a crack. And because thousands of ordinary people showed up and didn't leave. Harald Jäger was never decorated, never celebrated. He retired quietly, a man haunted by what could have happened and grateful for what didn't. History isn't always written by victors. Sometimes it's shaped by hesitation, by silence, by the one man who didn't pull the trigger. Thank you for watching Hidden in History, where shadows still speak. Subscribe for more stories they never taught you in school. And remember, the past is not silent. You just have to know where to listen.